कोस्ट गार्ड हेडक्वार्टर ये है, कोस्ट गार्ड हेडक्वार्टर नेवी का। इंडिया गेट वॉर मेमोरियल दिख रहा है।
Yeah, they studied here and went back and got very important positions in their countries and promoted Buddhist studies in their own country. So one of our fellow collaborator who was part of our project was Professor Sato Ryojun. He was the first ICCR scholar from Japan. He came to India in 1956 in BHU, and then he got his PhD in Buddhist studies from Delhi University. And then he went back and he became the teacher of Buddhist studies in Taisho University, and finally he also became the professor emeritus there. So what we find is that so he's actually in a way, unfortunately he's no more, and so his chapter could not become a part of our book. So this congregation, we are all here to pay an homage to him. And he was in a way embodied what he was, a monk and a scholar who actually very passionately he pursued in Buddhist relationship with India. He in fact the Nipponji, or the Japanese Buddhist temple in Bodh Gaya was established. He played a very important role in acquiring land from the government of India.
Instead, to deliver my thoughts about Buddhist exchanges between India and Japan. I began thinking about the role of South Asia-Japan exchange in the formation of Japanese Buddhism in 2001, following the completion of my first book, Neither Monk Nor Layman, Clerical Marriage in Modern Japanese Buddhism. While working on that book, I had noticed that many of the Japanese Buddhists discussed in the book had been interested in garnering information about the state of Buddhism and Buddhist sites in India.
Ranjhana Mukhopadhyay, thank you for introducing the outline of the book of great relevance to us all, and updating us on the recent development of the studies on Buddhism and enriching the context for our exchange of thoughts and ideas today. Professor Masahiko Togawa, Professor Himanshu Prabha Ray, Professor Okuyama Naoji Sensei, and Professor Yusuke Besho Sensei, and Professor Richard Jeff. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Distinguished participants, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, namaste, annyeonghaseyo, and konnichiwa.
Hello.
I'm deeply honored to speak before the renowned professors and eminent practitioners
On Japanese Buddhist travelers to South Asia, including several of the figures that I have written about in my book. Over the course of the next decade and a half, before the publication of Seeking Shakyamuni, a number of other studies of South Asia, Japan, and more broadly Asian-Japan Buddhist exchange also were completed. These included Nakajima Takeshi's book on Rashbahari Bose, the volume edited by Ogawara Masamichi,
and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. Unquote. May India and Japan continue to build trust, deepen cooperation, and work together for shared prosperity, regional stability, and global harmony. Thank you very much. Dhanyawad.
Thank you, sir. It felt you spoke from your heart, of course, and as such, you are as much a scholar as a diplomat. So thank you, sir, for a very enlightening address to us. With that, we would move to the keynote address by Professor Richard Jeffett. May I ask the dignitaries sitting at the dais to kindly take the seats in the front rows, or so that, or if it's...
We can see.
as Sumit Barua elaborates in his essay. Although Douglas Ober's excellent book concerning the Indian revival of interest in Buddhism, Dust on the Throne, was published too late in 2023 to be incorporated into the various essays in this book, Buddhist Exchanges, and
with India. This volume offers the first comprehensive English language studies of how Japanese Buddhists have engaged with India from the pre-modern period to the present. While earlier research is often focused on specialized fields such as Sanskrit philology, sectarian history, or Buddhist art, our contributors examine a broader spectrum of encounters. These include pilgrimages, academic scholarship, textual studies, missionaries, and revivalist activities. Through these diverse engagements, this volume reveals how India shaped Japanese Buddhist self-understandings and influenced the development of Buddhist studies in Japan. Another major strength this volume, a long way. This volume is its interdisciplinary and international authorship team, scholars from Japan, India, Europe, and North America, representing religious studies, history, Buddhist studies, Indology, and anthropology contributed to this work. This collective approach not only presents new empirical studies, but also enables us to re-examine
Institute for Languages and Cultures of Asia and Africa in Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. He has had a long association with Bengal and can also speak fluent Bengali. After completing his PhD on village society in West Bengal, he has been studying intellectual exchanges between India and Japan, including Okakura Kakuzo's interactions with Swami Vivekananda and Rabindranath Tagore during the British colonial rule in India. Besides being one of the co-editors of this book, he has also contributed a chapter on Bodh Gaya in this book. So welcome, sir. Please, the dice is yours.
engagement with India through the pre-modern travelers such as one Kojima Yasuko traces the life and narratives of Bodhisattva after his Oxford education, showing how Western philology, direct pilgrimage, and personal relationship jointly shape modern Buddhist studies in Japan. In Chapter 4, Sumit Barua studies Kimura Nichiki's writings in Bengali, showing how his 25 years stay in India, which began in 1907, fostered deep intellectual collaboration with India scholars such as Ashutosh Mukherjee and Rabindranath Tagore, as already Professor Richard mentioned. In Chapter 5, Thomas Newhall analyzes the institutional development of Indology at Japanese Imperial University, contrasting pre-Meiji Bongaku Sanskrit studies with modern academic fields such as Indian philology and history by offering a comprehensive analysis of Japanese.
Thank you, Professor Togawa, for the introductory remarks regarding the
So I won't go into that. But what did interest me is this is the whole shift from a virtual reality, which is Tenjiku, to a physical reality, which is India, in the 19th century.
Movement and his complex interaction with Japanese Buddhists, particularly the controversy over Japanese Buddha image, which reflected broader colonial religious policy. In Chapter 8, Noni Masaaki explores Otani Koze's expedition to India and Central Asia, revealing how archaeological pursuits and devotional motivation intersect in his vision of Buddhism eastward diffusion. In Chapter 9, M.N. Rajesh analyzes Carl Ekai's journey to Tibet and Japan's unique Orientalist gaze, revealing how Japanese and Western scholarly frameworks diverge and overlap. In Chapter 10, Okamoto Yoshiko visit the planned but unrealized Oriental Religious Conference named Prajna Paramita Conference in Kyoto. Despite its failure, the initiative stands as a landmark movement in early 20th century Hindu, Buddhist, and India-Japan collaboration. In chapter 11, Ranjhana Mukhopadhyay examines Fuji Nichidatsu's missionary work in India, his transformative encounter with Mahatma Gandhi, and the emergence of Nippon Zanmyo post-war pacifism. In chapter 12, Funahashi Kenta highlights Japan-India interaction with the Dalit Buddhist movement, particularly it started by Bhimrao Ambedkar, and the involvement of Buddhist monks such as Sasai Shure moving between India and Japan. And finally, chapter 13, Besho Yusuke analyzes contemporary forms of Buddhism.
Professor Fugawa, route from India to Vietnam and then Japan. There's a lot of work being done by Japanese scholars, Jun Tomura for one, who teaches maritime archaeology, but there's also the late Professor Nishimura, his team, who have done a lot of work on this 8th, 9th century shipwreck, which was found in Vietnam. You can see on the left-hand side where it was found, so very clearly, it's on the route. Authors who refer to Japanese scholars going to Europe. So that's an important shift that, I'm not a scholar of Japanese studies, so please do forgive my pronunciation. So Nanjo Munye's journey to India, what I found particularly interesting in his paper, Cunningham, who was the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, is credited with finding many of the sites which the Japanese scholars were then visiting, Sarnath, Bodh Gaya, and Sanchi, of course. But what he used for the society, and that's why I liked the point, see before and after. But also, please, I need to draw your attention to the fact in his work. Both there. I think there needs to be. I was really fascinated by the two papers in the book, but I think there is a lot of us who study Bodh Gaya or from this physical presence of archaeological sites and how the Japanese scholars were not just looking at text, but also.
In this book, I introduced Li Zhao. Li Zhao is come from northern side. He is the official one. Officially has a task from the government. He is a kind of public person, also kind of diplomatic person. Although he wear the monk's robe, his internal condition is just diplomatic officer. So then Southern Chinese did not welcome him. The Southern Chinese has a very global transnational network. How to develop the traditional transnational Buddhist English, also including heritage development. So we need to promote cross-cultural network on the Buddhist issue, not just only politics, just only economy. Just we should focus on cultural aspect. Then Buddhist diplomacy. This topic is very close to this point of view. Very good topic for discussing about this part of.
You know, the first temple, Buddhist temple which came up in Japan, in India was the Fuji Nichidatsu temple in Calcutta. And it's very important that he was that was supported by Jamanlal Bajaj and the Birlas. And both the Bajajs particularly had very close mercantile ties with the cotton. We have gathered here in a Saturday afternoon to be here on a topic which doesn't actually interest all, but then if you go into it, it's very interesting for all. And my first heartfelt gratitude to His Excellency Mr. Abe Noriaki and his wife, Mrs. Abe Mariko, who have both come here and will be with us. And of course to Professor Richard Jeffrey, who could not come here, but is very much, his presence was marked here. And thank you so much for being online throughout. I mean, I think it was the early morning now. By the time from 9 in the morning, we have come here. And of course to Professor Himanshu Prabhare for taking on the role of the discussant and giving a very good perspective of
Japanese Buddhist travelers to India who wanted to embark on a pilgrimage and sponsored some of the early pilgrimages in South Asia. So there very much is a strong economic aspect to this. And the Japanese at the time felt they were receiving these raw materials from India and selling cloth to India, as disruptive as that was to the indigenous textile industry in India. They felt that one of the things they could do in return is to try to help revive Buddhism in India in exchange for this economic benefit that they were receiving. But this became quite crucial and caused a lot of tension in India with the British at the time. So that's anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Before we move to the conclusion of the program, if there are any remarks or any conclusion.
On this discussion, Buddhist exchanges between India and Japan. This book represents not only a significant scholarly contribution, but also a time-honored tradition at Routledge, Taylor, and Francis.
And the audience will be very eager to read your chapter as much as the whole book. With that, let me say that there is a desk outside this seminar hall where the Routledge people are selling the book. So please get your copy soon, and you can of course get it signed by the authors.
Staff also learned so much. So they relatively they have a they stopped this kind of activity. They don't send Chinese monk as a delegation to India. Just send normal or Tibetan. Tibetan is more suitable for this kind of issue. They send some Tibetan monk to India from China. So they changed the strategy now. They understand this is aggressive way is very difficult to be welcome in India, especially in Bihar. Anyway, so just still the Japanese monk activities in India, especially Bihar. So I managed like this way three terms. First one is of course just Professor Jaffe mentioned Nihon Bukkyo Fukko.
This is one example of cultural exchange between India and Japan through Buddhism in ancient times. What I shall now introduce is an example of Buddhist exchanges between the two countries in the modern era, in which the Shingon monks plays an active role. My paper submitted to this volume is entitled Shakuko Zen and Japanese Buddhists in the Revival of Bodhgaya Temple.
Facility for visitors coming into Japan. It was archaeologically excavated and it has been conserved. And this ranges from 6th to 14th century. So then I come back to my what route did Bodhisena follow? Since he went from South India to Japan, and he was invited in the 8th century, he was accompanied by a Vietnamese monk and a Chinese monk. So certainly Chinese, okay, I can understand. China lies just across. Why Vietnamese? How does Vietnam link to this whole journey?
The assessment of how modern Buddhist studies were shaped by colonial and nationalist context. While 19th century Western scholarship tended to portray India as a lost or vanished Buddhist land.
The archive, for example, ordered from one Indian bookseller works by Monier Williams, Max Muller, Vincent Smith, Henry Hardwick, and Robert Childers. Did it make a difference if Kawaguchi read those works in Kashi, surrounded by South Asian pundits, rather than reading them in Europe? Who's now the chief elder of the Great Sangha of Japan, Nihon Dai Sangha Shunin Chodo, also is the founder of the Japan Theravada Buddhist Association, Nihon Theravada Bukkyo Kyokai. The group, which now has a status of a religious juridical corporation, has 5 branch centers across Japan. Sangha Plus Publishing's numerous books by Sumana Sara.
इंडिया गेट
नाइट में नहीं देखा था आपने इंडिया गेट?
मैंने दिन में गया आता जाता दिन में देखता था, नाइट मैच पहली बार देख रहा हूँ।
नाइट में मजा आता है।
नाइट में, हाँ नाइट में